As he took his first steps outside of his palace, what he saw struck a chord. He saw an old man dying right on the street in front. He realized that the human experience wasn't something that was perfect and sublime. Instead, it was death. As Gilgamesh realized many years ago, this was an inevitable part of the human experience. Siddhartha left his life of luxury behind and began a quest for knowledge and enlightenment. He studied with spiritual teachers and meditated for many years, searching for answers to life's big questions. Finally, after 6 years of seeking, he sat down under a fig tree and meditated until he achieved enlightenment. Enlightenment is a state of inner peace, in which one has transcended the limitations of the ego and is in touch with a universal consciousness or divine essence. It isn't a fixed and permanent thing, but rather an ongoing process of growth and development. But under that fig tree, Siddhartha became known as the Buddha, or the Awakened One. He would spend the rest of his life traveling the countryside, becoming close to the Enlightenment. Darius was determined to follow in his father's footsteps and take over the world. After finalizing their rule over the city-state of Ionia, the Persians were on a quest to take over Greece. Darius and his 20,000 men came to the city of Marathon in the year 490 BCE, a city 26.2 miles away from Athens. The Athenians were vastly outnumbered, with only 10,000 men. As the Persians were trying to regroup, the powerful Greek hoplites crushed the weaker Persian foot soldiers by routing the wings before turning towards the center of the Persian line. The remnants of the Persian army fled to their ships and left the battle. Early historians believe the battlefield littered 6,400 Persian bodies, while the Athenians lost only 192. So the Persians retreated, and an Athenian messenger named Phidippaides ran the 26.2 miles from Marathon to Athens, exclaiming with joy how the Athenians just beat the mighty Persian Empire. All of Athens went crazy with this fantastic news, hence leading the Phidippaides' historic trek to be sketched into history as the world's first marathon. However, the Persians weren't done, even with Darius I dying of mysterious circumstances. His son, Xerxes I, took over the crown and wanted to complete his grandfather's legacy. In 480 BCE, Xerxes I wanted revenge, so he brought his enormous invasion force of over 100,000 soldiers and was dead set on conquering Greece. Then, at a narrow pass at Thermopylae, the Spartan king Leonidas had his force of 7,000 Spartans maintain the defense. Leonidas knew of his disadvantage and developed a bold and daring plan to defeat the Persians. Rather than waiting for the Persians to attack, Leonidas ordered his soldiers to make a surprise attack on the Persian camp, catching the Persians off guard and disrupting their formation. Despite their success, the Greek army was ultimately overwhelmed by the Persians, who attacked from all sides and eventually broke through the Greek defenses. Leonidas and his soldiers fought with courage and determination. Still, they were ultimately defeated. Then came the Battle of Salamis, where the Greeks could change the tilt of the war in a naval battle between the 500 Persian trireme and 300 Greek trireme. It didn't look good for the Greeks. Still, the great Athenian general, Themistocles, employed his plan to move the Persian fleet into the narrow straits of Salamis and hit the enemy fleet so hard that it had nowhere to retreat. After a massive sea battle, Themistocles won Greece the victory and changed the face of the war. The Persians still had their goal: conquer the Greek city-states. Xerxes had returned to Persia, leaving Persian General Mardonius in charge of the Persian force for most of the significant battle yet. After diplomatic talks ceased, Persia knew they had to attack. As the Persians sent their troops to Plataea, the Greeks knew they had to work together. With 30 various Greek city-states working together, they were able to field a massive 110,000 hoplite army with the primary purpose of defeating Persia. Though that was nothing compared to the estimated 150,000-man army of Persia. The battle was fierce and intense, with both sides fighting with ferocity and determination. The Greek hoplites continued to be effective against the Persian cavalry and archers. The Greeks also strategically used the terrain, fighting on a slope that helped offset the Persian numerical advantage. In the end, the Greeks defeated the Persian forces and secured a decisive victory. The Persians suffered heavy losses, and Mardonius was killed in the fighting. The Battle of Plataea marked the end of the Greco-Persian Wars and the Persian threat to Greece. After the Persian War, life in ancient Greece was spectacular. A golden age of culture was upon us. With no longer having to face the threat of war, Athens was able to create architectural wonders, such as the Parthenon. The Parthenon sits upon the Athenian Acropolis, a prominent hill overlooking the city of Athens, to show its wealth and culture. No matter where you'll go in Athens, you can still see the Great Parthenon even today. Then came the theater. Around this time, the state would sponsor the most significant poets to create stories in the Athenian festival, called the City Dionysia, a festival designed to worship the Greek god of theater and fertility, Dionysus, creating playwrights such as Sophocles, Aeschylus, and Aristophanes. States were hungry for power. Athens was recruiting city-states into their Delian alliance, while Sparta was recruiting city-states into their Peloponnesian alliance. Both Sparta and Athens felt like they should control the city of Korkia, hence why in 434 BCE, war was upon the Greek peninsula, resulting in naval battles such as the Battle of Siblos and the Battle of Pylos. By 421 BCE, a short peace was negotiated. However, this peace would not last, and Athens had their eyes on Sicily. Initially, the expedition was going well. The Athenians established alliances with several Sicilian cities, and won several minor skirmishes against the Sicilian forces. But soon, Alcibiades, one of the greatest naval generals in history, was recalled to Athens to face charges of sacrilege. The Athenian fleet was left without his leadership. In his absence, the expedition began to unravel. The Athenians could not take the city of Syracuse, which had fortified its defenses and was well prepared for a siege. The Sicilians were aided by reinforcements from Sparta, which saw an opportunity to strike a crippling blow against its arch-rival Athens. The Athenians suffered from a lack of supplies and were plagued by disease. At the same time, the Syracusans launched a series of surprise attacks and ambushes. Finally, after months of grueling fighting, the Athenian fleet was destroyed in a decisive battle. Thousands of Athenians were killed, and many more were captured and enslaved. A decade after that, Athens fell to the Spartans. The age of legendary Greece was now over. Both Athens and Sparta were significantly weaker, never to regain the same power they once had, leaving the world ready for a philosopher king to conquer it all. He created the fields of biology and taxonomy by introducing a way to think called the scientific method, a method that is still taught in schools to this day. He also wrote extensively about philosophy, ethics, and art, changing the face of the world as we know it today. This is the man who was in charge of teaching Alexander the Great. Alexander was 20 when his father was assassinated, but his excellent education allowed him to take over the rest of the world. After his father died in 336 BCE, Alexander was hell-bent on keeping his family's power. So when the Greek city of Thebes decided to revolt, Alexander and his army marched 240 miles in 14 days. When Thebes refused to surrender, he razed the entire city to the ground, and 6,000 were killed, and the rest were sold into slavery. The rest of the Greek city-states recoiled in fear, allowing Alexander to do as he pleased, leaving for his new target to be Persia and the new Persian king, Darius III. In 333 BC, Alexander faced the Persian army at the Battle of Issus. This significant engagement saw the Persian king Darius III defeated and forced to flee.